Hey! Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
everybody.
We're just like trying to like figure everything out.
Figure it out.
We have a crew here with us tonight. We have Jillian, Shelley, Barbara,
Who are
Lindsay.
you?
Oh, I'm Aaron Angelo, and this is Christine Moser. We are of Endangered Species Theater Project, and we are really excited to have you guys here tonight to be a part of this whole thing. So anyway, as I was saying, Jillian Shelley is here, Barbara Lindsay is here, Jordan Hill is here, and John Cotter is here. Naji Carday might show up. We'll see if he comes in. But either way, we are here to hang out and talk to you about these little films that we just watched. So,
And there's a comments box, so anybody that has a question when people come out, correct? They can put them in the comment box.
You can. You can, as long as you're logged in. One of the things I realized about YouTube is you have to be logged in with your Gmail account or YouTube account in order for your comment to show up on there. But if you do that, good to go.
Okay, you can also text me if you want. I can give my number, or you can put it somewhere, and I can ask the question.
Sure. Do you want
I can put it in the comment box?
Here, I'll put it here right now.
Yeah, I just have my actual personal phone, so I'm gonna give that one, which is 206-992-6761. So if you can't leave a comment, just go ahead and text that number, and I will ask. I will tell Aaron, or and have them do that.
Yeah. So that's you can text any questions you might have there. And so I'm trying to say something to see if it works. It does work, and I see your comment. And F and Hipster, hello all. Glad to see your beautiful faces. It's good to see you too. This is Naj, by the way. Hey, Naji. You're welcome to come in if you want. Looks like it does. Yes, it does indeed. We see you. Cool. Okay, so I am going to Christine. I'm going to leave this up here, Christine, so that people can see it for a little bit, and we can take it down and pop it up as people need it. Just let me know if anybody needs to see this stuff. Thank you, Isgbert. How do I? Would love to come and join. I sent you an email. Can you, Christine, forward Naji that email that has the link?
I absolutely will.
Cool.
I'll go in and do that now. So you should probably take me out so people don't watch me doing the email.
Okay. Bye, Christine. We'll bring you back in later. So I'm going to bring in, everybody else. Why not? There's Jillian Shelley, one of my favorite actresses, Bab Lindsay, who wrote, what an extraordinary writer, am I right? Jordan Hill, who I just keep working with her because I can't stop because she's so talented. And John Cotter, who's one of my dear friends and also one of the best writers I know. Which is better? No, this is better. With all these faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this, and whoever's talking, I'll make your face big, if that's all right. So I don't know. How do we start? What do we want to talk about? Does anybody have anything you want to say before we get going and ask for questions?
I just wanted to thank Naji and Jordan for doing such beautiful work with those monologues. I sent Aaron. I mean, I want to thank Aaron too. But Aaron and I have spoken prior. But I was just so flattered and I was so mesmerized by both of you guys. You just you did stuff with the material that I wasn't picturing we could do, and I just really opened it up for me in this wonderful way. So I'm so grateful you guys took the time.
That's awesome. I was actually just thinking about this today because I was I'm preparing a class that I'm teaching on it's a history of theater class, and so I'm like reading old plays and watching videos and thinking what I put in my class and just watching like Death of a Salesman and watching how different actors make these different choices, and then trying to think about how do I explain what a play is versus what but it is really kind of fascinating to watch. There's Naji. Hey, Naji. It's really fascinating to watch to see the way different actors The way a play is not like it's not like a short story. It's such a collaborative thing.
And I wanted to say, if I may, to Aaron and Jillian, that you made me cry. So well done. That's my favorite thing in theater. Make me laugh, make me cry, make me think, and you made me cry. And I didn't make you laugh much, but you did make me cry. Thank you. Well done.
As long as it was because it was like emotionally moving, and not because you wrote this piece that's being completely destroyed.
Yeah. It was because it was emotionally moving. If not, I would suddenly have to go to the bathroom or something.
Totally. Ann Rao has a question. I'm going to pull it up here. So first question for John Cotter about Shelter in Place. I'm wondering if the horror genre is one you would have chosen anyway, or if that is a direct result of, well, circumstances.
The latter. Yeah. The latter. I just, I hadn't thought about it too much because as I was writing it, I just thought, I want to write it about an empty house in which strange things happen. You don't necessarily come up with all these conscious reasons why you want to do this thing. But as I was watching it, what Aaron's direction and Jordan's performance demonstrated to me, with all those wonderful shots of Jordan lost in that house, lost in that not very big house, made me realize how much of a monologue about loneliness it is. And, I think that's one real experience that we're all having in this historically interesting time, is that, we can't do as many things as we want to do. Even if we're able to see other people, most of the time we can't see their faces. And there's such a need to see other people's faces. It's a need to see strangers' faces. And just not being able to see people, we end up, it's like that scene in Richard II, when Richard's in prison and he says, well, if I'm all alone, I'll invent people in my head and I'll people a world with brain children, and they'll have these little adventures and do little jumps and things. And we had a friend who was out of town. She was staying up in Michigan, and she let us use her house because she has a backyard, which we don't have. And I was hanging out on her porch a lot. And, you'd think it'd be exciting to just have this other place where I can go. But I was actually kind of lonely. And her parents moved out of some apartment they'd had in town, and they moved all that furniture into her house. So it was me in this house that had twice the furniture that it needed to have. And so I thought, I got to be able to do something with this. So that was a long-winded answer to your kind.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like it's hilarious to me that came out of like a real situation. I mean, it's obvious, like, once you start working on the script, which Jordan and I did, you start to realize, everything like has this sort of correlation in it. There's something in the story that correlates to all of our collective experience during this crazy time. But it's also so like incredibly, it's really scary. Like I mean, it's really fun to make as like from the filmmaker side, because it's fun to sort of explore that crazy stuff.
Well, and also jump in quickly and said, I think Aaron and Jordan made it creepier than it was on the page, because I think Aaron with that wonderful music and those shots of the house, and Jordan with that just incredible freaked out performance that you delivered. Terrified me, because I knew what was happening in it, but I was watching it like, oh shit. I was really freaked out. So that was wonderful.
So I'm going to ask Jordan, and then I want to ask Naji, like, because for Babs's play, Jillian and I had, even though there were two monologues that we filmed separately, there's still a kind of like a back and forth, but the other two are such monologues, straight up one person plays. And I'm curious about how you sort of went about working on them, because both of you came in to the process, and as a director, I'm incredibly grateful. You both came in with so much preparation done and so much work done, that as a director, especially as a director who is also like setting up the sound and fixing the lights and working the camera, because there's two people in the room. I know, like, it's insane. But I'm curious about your prep work. What did you do to get ready for this piece?
I mean, I remember being incredibly thankful and excited that we had that conference call with John, because it's not always an option as a director, as a performer, to get to speak directly to the author. And with this piece specifically, and it's one of my favorite parts personally. I think it was a very gorgeous choice that you made, John, to have such ambiguity to so much of the text, because it allows a lot of people to be like, oh, that this is about loneliness, and or this is about isolation, and they can insert their own sort of personal feelings and narrative into the story itself, and it makes it that much more relatable. But as an actor, ambiguity is not an option. You have to know exactly what everything means. And there is some play and there's some give and take that you find out day of, but I was really thankful to get to pick John's brain for a really long time and just kind of see what sort of nuggets stood out to him or what inspired the piece. But then on my own, it was a lot of line drilling. It was a lot of, I had someone I got to work with who's very, very helpful, actually. Another actor that I know very well helped me just drill lines. And they're like, you can't make choices. You have to learn the text first. So I was just sitting in the living room, just spouting stuff as robotically as possible, as inanimate as possible, until the words themselves became muscle memory. And then that way, when we were sitting working in person, Aaron and I think, do you remember me sitting there with my notebook and just like spouting the text and be like, you know it, you know this, so you can forget it, and then you can allow yourself to relive the sort of unsettling and horrific moments that this character did.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's also kind of, it's at least this specific individual, once we figured out, the circumstances that brought her there, who she was talking to, things like that. It was a lot of, the same emotions that everybody is feeling right now, anxiety and feeling alone, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So in a way, it's just very cathartic. The frantic performance was just kind of me being me, to some extent. Yeah, it was definitely a fun process to work on. Cathartic.
I want to bring up, so Sophie Stairs asked, shout out to Naji for being able to make it seem like he was actually having a conversation on the phone. And I think that's a pretty great thing. And then Ann Rao followed that up with agreed. I could practically hear the nurse line voice on the other end. And I happen to know the way Naji worked on that because I was there. But do you want to talk a little bit about how you prepped for this monologue?
Speaking of being alone and experiencing catharsis, or just a cathartic outlet of emotion, I recorded, and I remember, Aaron, when you came into my apartment and asked, I don't remember exactly what you asked, but I remember how relieved you were at the fact that I had the nurse's lines written down, as well as my own lines written down too. And I had to constantly hear the nurse in my head. And so what I decided to do was record myself saying the nurse's lines, and I would just walk around.
We just lost Naji. But I'm here. That's right. He'll come back in. I'll finish his thought because I was there. I know what he's saying. He actually recorded he wrote the other part and he recorded them into his phone. And then he had his like headphone, which we incorporated into the piece because there's a whole bit where he's like trying to plug in his headphones so that he can talk to the nurse. But he actually was playing back the lines from the other thing. And for me as a director, here he's back. For me as a director, it was particularly tricky because the timing of the piece was completely unless we were going to cut it in a sort of like Jean-Luc Godard and Breathless and just like jump cut everything. Like the timing was entirely dependent on the lines that Naji wrote, but I think it brought a level of truth to it that really worked, and so I was happy. I was super happy with how that ended up going. I don't know if you could hear what I was just saying, Naji, but I was finishing your thought for you because I knew exactly what you were going to say. I was saying that the fact that you recorded your own voice, it brought a level of honesty to the piece, which it was like a layer to the piece that it wasn't the surface layer. It was a like a more like a layer below that was more substantive, that sort of allowed itself to percolate through. So the humor was still there, but there was this sort of like pathos that was in there as well, because of the truth that you were working with there. It was really beautiful work. Every actor that I worked with on this project is phenomenal, and I can't wait to work with that person again. I have another question here. Let's see. I'm gonna pull this up.
Really, I had to re-record it multiple times because I would interrupt myself far too early. As the nurse, I would interrupt myself far too early, and
It's
that time perfect.
I'm gonna take this off. Hold on.
I can't tell my audio. My Wi-Fi must really suck. My audio.
I know we're having a hard time. We're having a hard time hearing you. But it's cool. We're with you. We're with you. I do want to. There was. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. I'm trying to like run this whole thing. I have another question here. I'm going to pull up. That is from a text to Christine. I got a text asking what inspired Barbara to write that heartbreaking tale, back and forth monologue piece. Did she know anyone who met after an accident?
No, this play came from where a lot of my plays came from. I saw somebody do something, in this case, throw an empty potato chip bag out of his car window and then roll it up and drive away. And I started asking, I hate littering. I hate it worse than almost any other human behavior. And I thought, we all know that that's like it's a nasty thing to do. What is it that allows somebody to do something that they know is wrong and not think about it? And I realized a person who does something like that can't look back at the consequences. They can't look. He couldn't look back and look at how he had just dirtied up the street. And so as I began working that question, I write very much from character. And the man's voice came to me very clearly, very strongly, because his first line is, the thing about being an asshole is you don't look back. The woman's voice came much later. I think originally it was just going to be the man. And I realized this piece, it's got to have a counterpoint. There's got to be something that allows this man to redeem himself. So that's where it came from.
That's awesome. Fantastic. We got a question here from Sophie. For Jillian, did you and Aaron work on this together, rehearsing together, or bouncing ideas around, or did you prepare it as two very separate monologues? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Fabulous. For the most part, we prepared it as two very separate monologues. I think we both were kind of working on it on our own. And I feel like it was just before filming, we were like, we should have a little touch base on this. Is that true, Aaron? That's kind of how it worked,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was such a long, this was a really long process for this piece. It like literally months of working on it. And it was just, we filming things and then throwing it away and then refilming things and then scheduling things and things falling apart. So it was just like a long process of many different hairstyles and facial hairstyles. And
that was for him, not for me.
Yeah. But we didn't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we didn't really work. Here, I'll put me as so I'm talking like a jerk. We didn't rehearse together that much, but what we did was we did rehearse, and then we ended up directing each other kind of. So I filmed Jillian and Jillian filmed me. And
oh, wow.
we would both give each other feedback based on the response. So Jillian would say, everything from, your hat is casting a shadow on your eyes to, I feel like you need to commit more to this line or whatever. And we sort of worked like that. It was just the two of us, but
we just really felt like part of what makes this piece work is how there's these two people whose lives are so intertwined, even more than they realize. But while they're having these conversations, there is this one really huge, important piece that they just don't know, or at least she doesn't know, So it was important for us that these were kept really as separate monologues as much as possible, because there's some of the truth in that where they're living these lives together, but there's just a much bigger gap between them than she realizes. At least that was for me. I just felt it was important to not, like, I actually, other than reading it the first time, I didn't go back and read his sections again, because I wanted it to come from her truth and her reality and her moment. I mean, other than as an actor needing to know what the whole story was, I never wanted to touch it again because she doesn't know these things. And I didn't want any of that to seep in or color it in any way.
Yeah. One of the things I think one of the things that I tried to do in the way we put it together was never having us in the same space, and having the outdoors and the indoors and the different sound quality outside and the different sound quality inside. There was always this sort of barrier that we were working with between the two characters rather. And I wanted that barrier to be both metaphorical and really literal. There's something between them, and what it is the truth which hasn't been spoken. And so I think like by the way we worked on it separately, it helped me at least keep there's a kind of distance between those two. And I mean, I think the love between them is genuine and sincere. And Babs, you can definitely jump in if you, but I really love the idea of having them in two entirely separate spaces, looking at each other through a window, but with something between them. They're not actually together. And the way we rehearsed it is I think worked in that sense, but sort of working on them ourselves. I want to get me off of here. Hey, John, what do you want to say?
Ripped my heart out.
So John, you wrote two of these things, and I know, so this is something that, because John is a good friend of mine and we talk not infrequently, I know that John also wrote like essentially a book of monologues during this period.
Oh, wow.
Like he wrote these two and sent them to me and was having so much fun with it that he just kept writing them, which I think is super exciting. And I want to just like do a show of them when we can.
Did somebody say sequel?
Right.
Yeah.
What can you talk a little bit about the process of writing these? Because I know that, so I'll tell you a little bit about John. He is a great writer. He's he's a published novelist. He's published in millions of essays everywhere, and he has another great book of essays that will be coming out soon. And he's just an incredibly accomplished writer. And also, John and I did some theater together when I was living in Colorado, and I think both of us had sort of stepped away from theater for a while, and then we ended up doing a Wallace Shawn play together, and John directed it, and we worked for a year on a play that we ended up doing, just traveling around to people's living rooms and art galleries and various little spaces, performing it for 10 people at a time. And it was incredibly satisfying, fulfilling thing. But the John like presents himself to the world as just a writer, not just a writer, but he also is someone who really understands theater. And so I'm really interested, John, in when I presented this project to you, what your sort of thinking was when you came back to writing dramatic literature, because you're so used to writing for the page, and then did it change the way you think about writing? Did it change the way you approached these pieces, knowing that they would be performed? I think you're muted. Let me see. Oh, you are. Here, I got you. Okay.
I'm on mute.
You're good. No.
So like, So I just want to preface this by saying there's a blue. I don't have full screen, so there's a blue. I mean, it's not on. So there's a little blue tag on the bottom of my screen that says "Everyone can see and hear you." And I feel like I would like to have one of these in life. So, like, as I walk through the world, I would just like to have a little screen that says "Everyone can see and hear you." And it's like, just that I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? So yeah, well, you were kind enough to ask me for this monologue, and I didn't have an idea for the longest time. I was just walking around thinking, what am I, because I'm writing all these short stories now, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? And then one day I just had 10 ideas. And Barbara's the writer. She probably knows how this works. You push at it, you just throw yourself against that brick wall again and again. And then one day it's just, you're like, oh wait, I have too much to write. And I ended up writing like 10 of these, which something will happen with them someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I learned something doing this that is always useful to my writing. And I think this is a lesson I'll take as I go back and write for the page again, which is that when you write for the human voice, when you think in terms of the rhythms of telling, it's kind of always makes it better. And I had been writing short fiction, or I was writing essays. And then when I started writing these monologues, I would think to myself, well, okay, you actually have to keep everybody's attention with every line that follows. And that's something you don't always think about as you're writing, just whatever thoughts are in your head, that I have to keep, the listener has to care what happens next. And what I would do is, every once a week, my wife Elisa and our friend Mike and I would gather around a little fire in our friend's backyard, and I would read whatever monologues I'd written that week. And I would just kind of perform them. And I would say, for whatever reason, there was a virus. And I would just kind of like try to, do it the way a speaking voice works. And I would make notes, and I would cross out like, oh, they didn't laugh there. Oh, they were confused. Oh, they didn't like that part. And they would tell me like, oh, we didn't like that part. Or they would say later on like, oh, that was suspenseful. I don't know what happened. And I think it's useful because as I went back to writing fiction after that, I realized the value of writing for the human voice. Writing so that you're live with people.
Yeah.
And so that with every line, you have to try to keep them interested.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, we have a question here from Anne. How was this isolation production experience for the actors? Are there upsides? Naji, do you have a thought about acting in isolation as opposed to with a group? Usually acting is a very communal thing. There's usually tons of people around, lots of people involved, whether it's film or theater, there's always a crew. Naji is incredibly handsome, but I can't hear a word he says.
It's like a silent film on his end.
Oh, there he is.
I think the first thought I had was, thank God. That I could pour my artistry in doesn't require me setting it up. As an all-around artist, I get pretty burnt out from writing things, trying to figure out how and so to just do something and to just act it out and to read a script, that was a godsend for me during this quarantine, because I was not tired of writing or learning new songs, and trying to figure out how I wanted to record them, but I was tired of not having the communal aspect of it all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we lost him again. I'm going to bring Jordan in to answer this question as well. But like, I do think that there's something. It's I mean, it's nice to not have the pressure of performing for other people, I think, maybe, but it's also really sad. It's such a this work is something you do with other people, not by yourself, I feel. But
it's odd, to say the least, in a lot of regards. I mean, that seems to be the overarching theme of the pandemic 2020 in a nutshell. Odd. But I mean, from the perspective, at least, of the challenge as an actor, because I mean, I've done monologue work before, mostly in the vein of theatrical performance, not as much within film. I find a lot of film work is about sort of showing rather than telling those in-between moments, not always as much about the text. So this was kind of that weird but really challenging and cool and exciting middle ground with those two.
Yeah, that's how I felt too.
Yeah, and especially to be doing the piece alone, to be the only one performing and telling the story, or not necessarily in the case. I'm at least in that space alone, separate from the work that you do on camera with the editing and things like that. There's a sense of pressure almost to make sure that you're really driving the story and the pacing and the energy of the piece. But I don't know, in a lot of ways, it's enticing and it's exciting to get to try something that's a little out of the vein of normality or normalcy. And also, Aaron, you're always really fun to work with. So I wasn't like flying entirely solo. But yeah, and it's especially with film work, there's the ability, like I know we do our homework before we go into the space, but to be able to do something take after take after take and to try, like, okay, maybe flip this little thing or explore this option instead of that. So there's a little bit of a room play in film, which I always really enjoy. But at the end of the day, the fact that we're doing this now is the thing that makes me really happy, because it is a smaller crew that we were working with than you normally would in a performative aspect, but we're still sharing and we're still getting to create and engage with people this way. And I love that we're able to, really push our creative expectations and what we normally do as storytellers to accommodate very odd times. We're still able to tell stories and share.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. All right, I love it. All right, we have two more questions that are on here. I think we'll just address those, and then we will bring Christine back in and say goodnight to everybody. But we have a question here from Stephen Parnes. Shelter in Place reminded me of a 1962 Twilight Zone episode, Little Girl Lost, who gets lost in another dimension, yet in her own home. What were John's inspiration and interpretations of his work? I think you're on mute again, John. There you go.
As I just explained to this empty room, I think my interpretation of the work is not important. It's the viewer's interpretation of the work. I wanted the work to be deliberately ambiguous. I saw that somebody else mentioned in a comment that they thought that the narrator died of COVID, which I think, it was in the air, no pun intended, this idea of, but I think that to me is something that connects all three of these pieces this evening. And this is something that I wanted to ask Barbara and Jillian about too, which is that I feel like all three of these pieces this evening are about something happened, right? There's something happened, and people have to kind of like deal with that somehow, that this thing happened. And in the case of Kissimmee, Najee's monologue, the thing that happened is happening, right? I don't mean to be pointing down, is happening at that moment. And he's, reacting with this anxiety, and he's creating this suspense in what I had originally envisioned as a comic monologue. He's bringing suspense to it and opening it up in this suspenseful way. But he's dealing with the ramifications of this thing that's happening right now. And then in Shelter in Place, this thing that happened is something she's recounting later in this traumatized, shocked way. But in Jillian and Barbara's pieces, they're the ultimate something happened pieces, because as these two characters, and this thing has happened, right? This accident and this death, and one of them has reacted by building this cathedral of hope, and the other one has reacted by, I'm backwards to myself in the camera. The other one has reacted by building this like root cathedral of despair, underneath, like the inverse of this cathedral of hope. And I wondered, both Barbara as a writer, to what extent you tried to, I mean, obviously they're very parallel narratives, but just in the craft and the process, did you write one and then the other as a response to it, or did you deliberately, I mean, was it always two monologues? Was it at some point, did it have another form? And then I also wonder with Jillian and Aaron, when you were acting it, to what extent was the watching each other's performances, watching each other's pacing, watching each other's, the level of emotional intensity that you bring into it, your emotional pacing, to what extent did that influence the other's performance? Because it's not like doing it live on stage, right? It's a very different experience.
Well, I'll put Barbara on there.
Well, when I said earlier that I write from character, I really am incapable of writing if I don't hear the character speaking to me. It's almost, I don't want to sound woo-woo, I really don't, but it's almost like taking dictation. I don't remember coming up with these characters. I just heard, it was definitely one at a time. I heard the man's voice first. And the woman came in because I heard that this man was heartbroken. He was heartbroken at who he recognized himself to be, and he wanted to be a better man. So at first it was just the man's voice, and then the woman began to intrude, and the counterpoint of the woman's story and how very differently they interpreted the same thing just fascinated me. This, I think of it as a play, actually, instead of as monologues. And as a play, it actually, or even as monologues, it breaks so many theater rules. It's people who are just talking, they're not really doing anything, and they're talking about something that's happened in the past, which usually is just death in a theater. And I think the only thing, besides you need really good actors to pull it off, the only thing that really redeems it, that makes it work, is that the feelings they're having about what has happened are very present and very real for them. Did I answer your question?
I'm putting Jillian in case you have anything to throw into that, Jillian.
Oh, it's me now. Hello, everyone. To go off of it, one of the things that struck me when you asked, did Aaron and I kind of base off of each other's monologues? Now I want to go back and do it again and do that. We actually didn't. We very specifically kept ourselves completely separate. I don't know if it would have benefited from having a third eye being able to watch both of us so that they can watch the shape of that. But we really, I mean, that was the good and bad about the fact that we were both kind of filming each other. We were able to kind of give each other those cues without having to actually watch each other to build on that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. One of the hardest things for me, and this is something that Aaron and I did talk about a lot, is not playing what we know. Meaning, literally, this is this woman whose children died, and then she's now in this relationship and what that relationship means to her. But part of the way, and this was fantastic about the way that Babs wrote these monologues, is you're not quite sure at first what is the trauma, what is the thing that she's talking about, what is the, because there's even a little part in the first monologue where she talks about her husband and he's gone. So you're like, oh, is that the drama? There's the husband, and then and then it's the kids. And then it was hard for me. One of the things we really talked about is not playing the fact that I'm talking about my children who have died. There's so many little nuances and so many little pieces and it's layered with then the feeling I have for Aaron. So that we did talk a lot about how to build that and how to not give that away. Because like you were saying, Babs, these are just people talking. These are people talking about something that's already happened. And if we're playing the end result at the beginning, there's there's zero place for either of us to go. And so that was just something we were very conscious of. I kind of veered off from what you were asking, but it clicked in my head when you were talking about it.
That's no. That's awesome. I'm gonna do this really quick. I'm gonna put everybody back up on here. I do want to. I'll read these last couple of comments here real quick. Wonderful writing and acting. I'm assuming the ending of Shelter in Place was meant to be up in the air, but personally, I was interpreting that she had died of COVID, that she was the ghost. Oh my gosh.
Dun, dun, dun.
I love it. Dale, that's brilliant. That's also kind of like what John was saying. It's up to the audience to make the interpretation. I didn't see it that way when we filmed it, but I kind of love that actually.
I know. If I may briefly interject, it's again, it's that bit of ambiguity that's so fun. I remember, and that was what I really wanted to pick John's brain about as well when we were finishing. And he's like, "You got to decide on your own." And I remember I was walking through my house at the time when I was with my family, and I was like, "What happens to her?" And I like pulled my family members, and my dad is just like, "She died." Yeah, so
that's
it
great.
was really up
So
in
great.
there.
Well, I would just Amy rehearsal process, change monologues, can't press. Yeah. John just asked my question. Well done. Okay, so Amy, I assume your question was answered. We're at a good over 40 minutes in this talkback. I think that's plenty. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with such extraordinary writers and such extraordinary actors. And this is a project that hopefully we'll keep doing. You know, this is the type of thing that we could even do even after COVID, if that ever happens. But certainly, this is something that I would love to keep doing because it's been an absolute joy for me. Naji, Jillian, John, Babs, Jordan, thank you all so much for being a part of this project. Thank you for I'm going to bring Christine back in too, because thank you all for working with us and helping me keep my sanity when I can't make plays or anything. And let's just keep it up. Muchas gracias. Te amo mucho.
Thank
It was
you.
really
Aw,
fun.
thank you
Thank you,
guys.
everyone. And also to those that might still be listening, just to let you know, we are going to release these kind of like separately. And so if you, for probably a few weeks, because it would have gotten a run otherwise. And so if you particularly liked one, if you want to recommend all three, please tell your friends about it. They won't be up for a couple of days, but we will put them up because it also helps our artists get paid, because we do give, we split the door with the artists, and I mean literally the gross. So so that helps us give a little bit more to our artists. So just wanted to tell your friends if you enjoyed it. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, John. Goodbye, Jordan. Goodbye, Christine. Goodbye, Babs. Goodbye, Jillian. Goodbye, Naji. Goodbye, Aaron. Goodbye, Naji.